You talk to homeowners every week. What's the one thing most of them are completely missing when it comes to their own finances?
They're sitting on a significant amount of money and they don't know it's there. Or they know it's there and they think leaving it alone is a safe move. You see, equity that sits still doesn't protect you. It just waits. And waiting has a cost.
Let's start with the basics. What is home equity and why does it matter so much?
Yeah, home equity is the difference between what your home is worth and what you still owe on it. If your home is worth $600,000 and your mortgage balance is $350,000, you have $250,000 in equity. That's real money. It's sitting in your biggest asset. But here's the thing, it doesn't work for you until you decide to employ it. Most homeowners think of equity the way they think of a savings account. It feels safe, it's growing, leave it alone. And that framing is fine if your only goal is to sell the house someday. But if you have any interest in building wealth in the meantime, that equity sitting idle is actually a missed opportunity. Every month it doesn't work is a month you're not compounding.
What's the biggest misconception homeowners have about accessing their equity?
The biggest misconception homeowners have about accessing their equity is that using it means you're in financial trouble, that it's a last resort, that somehow pulling equity is an admission that things aren't going well. That framing comes from a different era. It was built around cash out refinancing as a bailout tool. People pulling money to cover debt, to fund lifestyles they couldn't afford. That's a completely different conversation from using equity strategically as a capital allocation decision. High net worth households do this constantly. CPAs and financial advisors build strategies around it. It's not desperation, it's financial sophistication. And the question isn't whether you should touch your equity, the question is whether you have a plan for it. If you don't, you're leaving a decision unmade that's already costing you.
So for a homeowner who wants to actually do something with their equity, what are the tools?
Well, there's three main ones, and they serve different purposes. A cash-out refinance replaces your existing mortgage with a new, larger one, and you take the difference in cash. For example, if you owe $280,000 and your home is worth $600,000, you might refinance to $375,000 and walk away with $95,000 in cash. You have one mortgage, one payment. And that's best when you want a lump sum and the rate on the new loan makes sense relative to what you have today. A HELOC is a home equity line of credit. It functions like a credit card secured by your home. You're able to draw on it as needed, pay interest only on what you use, and the line stays open. It's really ideal for ongoing opportunities. Maybe you're buying real estate in phases, or you want to access capital without committing to a specific use yet. A home equity loan is a fixed second mortgage. You borrow a specific amount at a fixed rate separate from your first mortgage. It's a predictable payment, clear payoff date. This one's good when you know exactly what you need the money for and you want a certainty in the payment. The right tool depends entirely on what you're deploying it towards. That's always the first question.
Give me a real example of a homeowner who used their equity strategically and what it actually looked like.
Yeah, so a couple came to me about 2 years ago. They'd been in their home 11 years, and they bought in a great neighborhood in Denver. The home had appreciated significantly. When I ran the numbers, they were sitting on just over $310,000 in equity. They never once thought about it as something to use. They'd been telling themselves for years they wanted to buy a rental property, something that would generate income. But every time they looked at an investment property, they thought, we don't have enough for a down payment. The reality is the down payment was already in their house. They just couldn't see it. So we did a cash out refinance, pulled out $95,000. They used $80,000 as the down payment on a $380,000 long-term rental property. And then they kept the rest as a cash reserve. 18 months later, that rental cash is flowing roughly $400 a month after the mortgage, insurance, and management costs. They didn't spend their savings. They didn't take on risks they couldn't handle. They reallocated capital that was already sitting in their biggest asset. The equity was there for 11 years doing nothing, but it took one conversation to change that.
What do most homeowners miss or get wrong when they start thinking about this?
Well, they skip the math. Using equity strategically only makes sense when the return on what you deploy exceeds the cost of borrowing. That's not complicated, but most people never actually run the calculation. If you're borrowing at 7% and the investment returns 4%, you've made things worse, not better. So you see, the rate environment matters, the opportunity matters, and both have to be true at the same time. The other thing people miss is timeline. A cash-out refinance extends your mortgage or resets your rate. If you're 3 years from selling, that may not make sense regardless of what you do with the money. And there's a use case distinction that's important. Equity deployed into something that generates returns is a wealth strategy. Equity deployed into consumption, renovations that don't add value, lifestyle expenses is a different conversation entirely. One builds and one doesn't, and that's why the conversation always starts with the goal, not the product.
What's the most costly mistake you see homeowners make with their equity?
Yeah, the most costly mistake homeowners I see with their equity is waiting to have the conversation until they need the money. And I see this constantly. Homeowners who have 200, 300, sometimes more in equity, sitting on it for years with no strategy. And then something happens. A business opportunity, an investment they want to make, a property becomes available, and now they're trying to move fast on something significant without having that structure in place. An equity strategy isn't reactive. It's something you build before you need it so that when the opportunity appears, you can move quickly and strike. The homeowners who use equity well are the ones who understand what they have before they decide what to do with it. Understand your equity position now, not when something forces the conversation.
For a homeowner watching right now who wants to understand where they stand, what do they actually do?
First, get a rough equity estimate today. You can pull up Zillow, Redfin, any of these tools, look at the estimated value, and then subtract your mortgage balance. That's your ballpark number. It's not exact, but it tells you whether this is a conversation worth having. Second, before you do anything else, talk to a mortgage professional. Not a financial advisor, not a real estate agent, a mortgage professional. The first question is whether equity access makes sense given your current rate, your loan structure, and your timeline. Those three factors determine which tool fits, and everything else comes after that. I do a free 20-minute equity strategy call. No paperwork, no commitment. You just tell me your situation, and I'll be able to tell you what the options look like and whether any of them make sense. That's it.
And if they want to have that conversation with you specifically, where do they go?
Yes, you can schedule a free 15-minute call through my website, teamaronheim.com. You pick the time, I come prepared. We're going to look at your specific situation, your equity, your rate, your timeline, and I'll tell you exactly what the options look like. No generic answer, or you can text me directly at 720-200-5464. If you've been sitting on equity with no plan, let's change that. You already have the capital. The only question is whether you have the strategy to deploy it.